Hollywood, hosted by Marcus No Sereno. Welcome to the life of Hollywood, hosted by Marcus No Sereno.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Life of Hollywood, a podcast where we converse with working professionals about their start and the competitive world of Hollywood. I'm your host, Marcus Nocerino. Hollywood is full of all the glitz and glam, but behind the scenes, it's a world where obtaining a job, position, or role is challenging and rough. Today's guest will show us his ways and will introduce us on how he manages to live and inspire the life of Hollywood. My guest today is Tyrell James, whose acting credits are from NBC, HBO, Discovery, as well as commercials with different brands like Embassy Suites and M&T Bank. He is currently a host of another podcast called The Quotes and Mirrors, which is about how the world shapes our lives, challenges our thinking, and reflect our personal journey. Tyrell, Tyrell, thank you so much for being here today, for joining me about your journey in Hollywood.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. Talk to me about how you got started with your journey.
Well, I discovered my love for acting when I was 10 years old. I remember I was in a play at school, and I remember the exact place I was standing on the stage. I remember looking out into the crowd, and I remember making a decision at that moment at 10 years old that I wanted to be an actor. Well, I made two decisions: one, that I wanted to be an actor, and two, that I didn't want to go to college because I wanted to be an actor. and from there, I actually started. I discovered that I had a passion and a gift for writing and for making music. So music actually took over for me, and because for one thing, with music, I had the means of making the music. It was a lot easier to find a studio, to find producers, um, to get in there and record. It was a lot easier to do that than it was to audition and get in front of the camera or whatever. But eventually I hooked up with some people that were in the film business, and from there I got signed to a management team. I was with the management team for several years. I ended up just severing ties with them this year, and the people that I started with in the beginning are now the ones that are managing me.
Nice, nice. And what is your favorite project that you have worked on so far?
My favorite project is actually one. So I own a company called Relic Media, and we my under my media company, we are actually filming some things. And so the funny thing is, my favorite, well, I'll say this: outside of what we've shot, what we've done on our own, my favorite was I played this guy named Tavon White, who was the leader of the Black Guerrilla Gang in Baltimore. He was locked up, um, and he got four of the correctional officers pregnant while he was in prison, and I played him on BET for a show called Criminals at Work. And that one was there were long days, like we were on set for between 13-15 hours. um there was we shot this at a jail where the facility was still there, but it was shut down, so there was no electricity, there was no running water. And it was these 2 days that we shot there, they were the coldest days of the year, and so it was freezing, but i I enjoyed every minute of it.
Nice. And talk to me about the audition process for the project.
For that particular project, the funny thing was, when I went to go audition for this project, my managers had sent me this, and Um, I for some reason I didn't see it in time to make the deadline for the actual, for the audition. And I decided I want this so badly. Let me just show up anyway. So what I did was I got there. I believe the audition time was like 9 o'clock. I got there at 8:30, and I said, "Look, I didn't have I didn't see the email until late, but I really want to audition for this role, and so I got here early, hoping that you could squeeze me in before you officially started these auditions." So they let me audition. As I'm auditioning, um, I can tell by the reaction of the woman that I'm auditioning with that she really is into it, that she's enjoying it. And so probably 2 days later, she calls me and she says, "Listen, you got the role, but I want to tell you something, but I'm not going to tell you until after you finish filming." And I said, "Okay, no problem." So she said, "I want you to call me after you finish filming." And I called her, and I said, "Okay, we're all finished filming. What did you want to tell me?" And she said, when they first saw your picture, they were like, "This isn't going to work. He doesn't look enough like the guy." She said, "But once they saw you acting, because the entire audition was improv." She said, "Once they saw your acting, I had to be approved by three different people. So I had to be approved by her first, and then her, like the casting, the person that owned that casting agency, and then BET, because we shot this for BET. And they said that I blew everybody away. They said, even though he doesn't look enough like this guy, so what? His acting is too good." So I, that's it. Things just. I felt like that role was just meant for me.
Nice, nice. And how was your experience like working with BET?
That was cool. It was like I said, it was my favorite. Probably the favorite thing that I've ever shot. They were good. I mean, they were on top of um just making sure that the film, that everything was running smoothly, especially with the conditions that we were in, with it being so cold, there being no electricity. They had to bring in generators so that we could hook up our, all of our equipment, so that we could have our lights and all of this stuff. But I mean, they did a really good job of making sure that we were, that we were very well taken care of, and that everything just ran smoothly. But it was good. It was good.
Also, I want to make an announcement. For the first person that comments on this podcast video will get a shout out on the next episode. So, Tyrell, I saw that you do a podcast called the Quotes and Mirrors podcast.
Mhm.
Talk about how you got started with podcasting.
Well, I started off in radio first, and I was on two different radio shows, and then from there, I decided to. But I had co-host, so at that point, I decided to jump out there on my own. I wanted to do a podcast on my own, and I started a podcast called the Rorschach Test Podcast. Um, then I branched off and I decided to do the quotes and mirrors. I, got in touch with my cousin and said, "Listen, I have this other idea for this podcast called Quotes and Mirrors." And we started doing that. Now I'm at the point where all these podcasts are now under my company, Relic Media. So now the Rorschach Test Podcast, I put that on hold. I'm going to come back around to that. But Quotes and Mirrors, we're still doing Quotes and Mirrors. I'm on another podcast called The Why Behind the Why, which is hosted by me and a doctor of metaphysics, where we give metaphysical explanations for things. Then there's another podcast called The Art of Opinion Podcast. It's me and three of my partners, and we just it's like a barbershop talk, but from a very intelligent and comedic viewpoint. Um, then there's one other podcast that I'm not on. It's a cousin of mine and his best friend called Now That's Debatable, where they debate anybody about anything. So Relic Media right now is, for the most part, we have the podcast, but we're also shooting shows. Like we're also working on a show right now called Cocktail Wars. And it's about we're doing this at a bar where every month their bartenders have to create drinks. So I've gone in there and I've turned this into a show where I have these people competing against each other now. So Relic Media
Nice,
is
nice.
doing more than just podcasts. We're filming shows. We're like we can cover weddings and graduations. I have photographers. To do all of that stuff. Videographers. Yeah, we do all of that now.
That's pretty interesting for your business to have all these like opportunities for like future entertainers and also
Mhm.
for people behind the scenes. And do you have any like projects coming up soon?
Well, right now, just like I said, we're working on Cocktail Wars. We do have a cooking show that we're starting in April of 2026. We will get that done soon. I am working with I'm not going to, reveal which network, but there's a network that wants to bring our podcast over there and have it more of a TV format. So right now I'm working on how we're going to make the move from, just this podcasting thing to a more of a TV setting. Um, but right now, those are the main projects. There are some other things that we're working on, but I just can't really talk about them right now. But these other things are the
Nice.
things that I already have in place.
And what kind of career path would you do if you weren't like acting or podcasting?
Um, Music, boxing. I probably would have gone pro boxing. I own a boxing team, and but the only reason I probably didn't go pro with boxing was because I was just gifted. I was more gifted in these other areas as far as music and acting. Um, but yeah, I can. It would probably be boxing. Right now, I'm also in school to become a doctor of philosophy, specializing in metaphysical counseling. So I would probably just devote more time to counseling people as well. So yeah, and I'm 44, so I wouldn't be boxing right now. I probably would have hung it up at this point, But as far as the other things, definitely still in music. I'm still in music. I'm writing. I'm actually working with an R&B artist right now. I'm writing her album. I am working on music myself. I'm going to release a couple of projects. So definitely music and counseling. I'm a firearms instructor too, so that would be another major thing for me.
Busy man. And what are like
Yeah.
your future goals in your career?
You said my future goals?
Yes.
Um, Really just to become as successful as possible in all of the things that I've already named. You know, there are, I I have some major plans for media for Relic Media for this to be a major media company. In the near future, in the very near future, that's the plan there. But to also be able to be in a position to create opportunities for other people, which is part of the reason that I started the company. I don't like a lot of the gatekeeping in Hollywood. I don't like the way a lot of things go. So I wanted to have control. I wanted to be able to create opportunities for people, and, for the people where it's a little harder for them to get into the business or to be able to get roles that they may want to be able to get. I just want to be able to help as much as I can, while still becoming successful in the process.
Nice. Tyrell, thank you so much for joining me today and for like
Mhm.
having such a great conversation with me.
No, thank you. I
I
appreciate you.
really,
Thank you for having me.
yeah, I really wish you all the best of luck and success on your journey.
Thank you.
Follow
Thank you.
Tyrell James on all his social media accounts and also check out his website on the description box. Also, subscribe to my podcast down below and follow my podcast on Instagram and TikTok. Thank you to my producer, Frolian, and I'll see you all next time for another episode of The Life of Hollywood.
Welcome to the life of Hollywood, hosted by Marcus No Sereno.